Good evening and welcome to the Town of Rockland Board of Selectmen meeting, Tuesday, February 16, 2021. Please direct your attention to Selectman Larry Ryan for the Pledge of Allegiance. Selectman Ryan.
Yep, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Larry. Good evening and welcome. Please be advised that this open meeting is being broadcast live and recorded by WRPS for playback on Comcast Channel 14 and Verizon Channel 31. It is also available live online at wrpsrockland.com/TV and within 24 hours via video on demand at youtube.com/WRPSRockland. Please go to www.wrpsrockland.com for further information. All right, first on the agenda, community announcements. Annual town report photo contest. Doug?
Thanks, Mike. Yep, as we did last year, we're doing a contest for the general public to submit photos for the front and back cover of the annual town report, which we publish hundreds of them, and we post it online as well. So our deadline is this Friday, the 19th. We encourage anybody that has a nice picture of the town, of a landscape, something like that, to email it to the address listed on our agenda by the end of the day on Friday. And I also had one other quick announcement, Mike. I'm going to just share my screen briefly. The town is going to be doing another COVID test for the public this upcoming weekend, February 20th and 21st. And I will talk about this a little bit more during my COVID update. But I just thought under community announcements, I'd let the public know this weekend, the 20th and 21st, 8 to 4 on Saturday and 8 to 2 on Sunday. It's a drive-through at Memorial Park School. Bring your insurance card, and if insurance doesn't cover it, there's no cost to the patient. So I just wanted to highlight that, and that's all I have, Mike.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, open session minutes of February 2nd, 2021. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor, Selectman Mullen.
Yes.
Selectman Ryan.
Yes.
Selectman Penny.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Nyman.
Yes.
And myself. That's unanimous. Okay, under new business, CDBG subordination requests.
Hi, Mike. Yep, sure. So we've done these, you've done these many times before when a resident who's been part of the program is looking to refinance and take cash out. There's a whole process to make sure that it's approvable and that it's appropriate and it's all documented in the memo. And this time we actually have Christine from COG, our consultant, who is here in case you had any questions. And also, assuming you don't and that you want to sign it, Mike, given the time constraints, if you could physically sign it on camera, which Christine can observe, she can then notarize it later and get all the paperwork filed in time. But it's pretty standard. You've done this many times.
Sure.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, so the only thing I just want to mention is it's great to actually see Christine. Christine, we've heard a lot about you over the years. And we always usually see Wayne, but it's nice to finally see you and meet you, at least over Zoom. So thank you for all your work for Rockland.
My pleasure. It's nice to meet you all.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, Vice Chairman Nyman.
Yes.
Selectman Mullen.
Yes.
Selectman Ryan.
Yes.
Selectman Penny.
Yes.
And myself. That's approved.
Great. Thank you all.
Thanks, Christine.
Have a good evening.
Okay, next on the agenda, request for Class 2 licensed used car sales, 511 Union Street, Kevin McGee.
Could I give a brief update on this, Mike?
Absolutely.
Sure. So, the board certainly knows all the history with this property and requests for permits and lawsuits that have gone, back and forth over many, many years. And I'm certainly not going to try to recap all of that. But I'm pleased to say that I think we're in a really, really good spot right now. There's been an agreement worked out with Mr. McGee and the Zoning Board of Appeals, where I know you all live in town and you all go up and down Union Street. He's done a fantastic job cleaning the property up. I think we all believe it's significantly improved to what it was before. And he's successfully gone through the Zoning Board of Appeals to receive a use variance, which is certainly not a very common thing. But in this type of situation, it's really the perfect tool to help someone with a property that may not conform to current zoning, but that when there's been a prior use, it just makes a world of sense. So the Zoning Board of Appeals did approve his request for a use variance to sell used cars on the premises. And I included in your packet the decision, which included 12 separate specific conditions. So what my recommendation is to the board, assuming you're amenable to this, is to approve Mr. McGee's application for a Class 2 license, which he has submitted and I did include in your packet. But just to have that approval be contingent on getting through the required 20-day appeal period with the Zoning Board of Appeals approval that's required by law, and also just contingent on all 12 of the Zoning Board of Appeals conditions. And then lastly, just obviously contingent on any of the building inspectors, code requirements that everybody would be subject to in a similar situation. And I believe Mr. McGee or his son is also here on the Zoom and might be able to answer any questions you have, but I'm excited to be able to kind of present this. I know it's been a long time coming, and again, I think it's a good opportunity for both sides to move forward.
Chairman, may
Absolutely, Larry.
I? We go back a long time, Mr. McGee and I, on this issue. And from the beginning, there was always issues with certain committees and things like that. I would like to be the guy that welcomes them back into the fold, and I'm going to make a motion after you guys, if anybody else wants to speak, that we give him his license and contingent on the things that Doug Lapp said.
Thank you, Larry. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to, this hopefully certainly looks like a scenario where the town and the business owner finally, after years, let personal issues aside and come to an agreement that hopefully benefits not only the town but the business owner. I do want to personally say thank you to Michael Laughlin. Without Mike's diligence on this, I don't think this happens. I also want to say thank you to Mr. McGee. Everything that's happened over the years, put it aside. Through the work of Mike and others, the opportunity presented itself, and Mr. McGee so far has followed through on everything. As you drive by, that property looks absolutely amazing. And I wish him all the success. The only thing I'll say is, we don't ever want to go down this path again. So he's got to stay to the conditions. We've got to keep the business in the condition that it's in today. And I certainly hope that the townspeople, and quite honestly, not just the townspeople, but other towns around, come in and support his business, and that it becomes a thriving business once again.
Thank you, Rich. Anybody else?
So yeah, no, I just want to say something like Rich actually took all the words out of my mouth, and that's hard to do, as we know. But I mean, really, I think, this whole example shows how far we've come as a town and how we're working with people. And I too just want to thank you, Mike. You have been the energy around actually resolving this for 3 years, basically. I mean, and I wholeheartedly agree with Rich. Without you, we wouldn't be where we are tonight. And I just want to thank you. I want to thank Mr. McGee for working with you and everyone who, I think have been part of these efforts. So thank you, Mike. Your leadership on this was second to none.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
I also have to agree with my colleagues and what they have said. I also want to thank Mr. McGee for his efforts in cleaning up the property. Looks great, and I want to wish you well over the next years.
Thank you, Kara. Kevin, any words before we vote?
No, sir. I'm just, it's just a long time coming, and I'm glad I put it behind us, and I can get back to where I was at one point in my life.
So the way this,
I definitely, Mike, not an overstatement from what they said, if it wasn't for you, it probably would have never moved forward, and I do appreciate everything that you have gone and done. I know it wasn't easy, but I do deeply appreciate what you did, and I'm thankful for that.
thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it. Where this really came from, obviously, some things that happened over the years, and not going to get into what was right and what was wrong, but I firmly believe that it's not the role of a governing body to make things personal with a resident. I think that things got personal in this case, and it got personal, I think, on both sides.
Oh, it did.
Yeah, absolutely.
No doubt.
And we've been pretty candid about that, Kevin, in our conversation.
Yeah.
And it got personal, and I don't think it's right for a town to prevent a business from operating out of personal feelings. And I was glad when I reached out to Kevin. What are we going on 2.5 years now? To try to extend an olive branch and move this thing along. It really stemmed from our economic development of downtown. Would we rather people come into town and first thing they see is a junkyard, which Kevin was very candid in saying that he wasn't going to clean it up. And I went to him and I asked if he would clean it up. I think they'd rather see a car dealership than a junkyard any day of the week, especially on our main street in town. So Kevin, I appreciate the money you spent to do so, and I appreciate the hard work that you put into it. And I think I've got a motion from Larry. I'll call for a second in a minute.
I'll second that.
I got a second before I call it, but okay. I think this is a turning of the page, Kev, and hopefully your dream will come true, and you'll be able to turn that business over to your son, who's now back from the Marines, which is what you indicated to me was your main priority. So hopefully
Yes.
we won't be down this road again, Kev. And I got a motion and a second. All those in favor, Vice Chairman Nyman,
Yes.
Selectman Ryan,
Yes.
Selectman Mullen,
Yes.
Selectman Penny,
Yes.
and myself. It's unanimous, Kevin. You get your license back.
Thank you to all the board members. I deeply, deeply appreciate it.
Work hard, kid.
Wish you all the best.
But
Thanks.
how do I expect the lucky you get? Thank you, Larry,
You're welcome.
Penny, Mrs. Nyman. I forget the fourth, fifth one. I'm sorry.
Mullen, Mr. Mullen.
It's okay. I'm still here, Kev.
All right,
I was
Mr.
trying to
Mullen.
forget him too, but
How can I forget that Irish name? I gotta be hung for that. Sorry about
No worries at all.
All right, have a good night.
Thanks,
Thank
Kev. Okay, next on the agenda, affordable housing responses / votes, option to purchase via right of first refusal, 28 Midfield Drive, Rockland, and 17 Vaughan Road Drive, Unit 53A, Rockland. Doug?
Yep, thanks, Mike. So there are 2 homes in Rockland that were, purchased as affordable units with deed restrictions, and included on the requirements when the homeowners wish to sell, the town gets the right of first refusal, which a town might want to exercise if it has the funds available to make sure that the affordability restrictions continue. So we were notified about this from the monitoring agent. So our recommendation is that we not acquire these really for two reasons. The first is we don't have any funds appropriated to purchase these, so we really couldn't even if we wanted to. But we really don't need to. The monitoring agent is making all solid efforts to sell these with the affordability restriction going forward. And I included in your packet a lot of the promotional material that shows the efforts that they'll take. So, this is, I think, an action that, to be honest, I could have exercised on my own, but the first time it's come before us, so I wanted to have it publicly discussed and just to let you know where I'm coming from. So it's obviously if we had, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars available immediately for this, it might be something that we'd want to do, but we don't have the funds, so it's not even an option. But again, even if we did, where we have a monitoring agent that's going to keep it affordable, there's really no need to tie up taxpayer funds for it. So that's my recommendation, unless you have any questions.
Okay, any discussion from the board?
No.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second,
A motion and a second. All those in favor, Vice Chairman Nyman,
yes.
Selectman Ryan,
Yes.
Selectman Mullen,
Yes.
Selectman Penny,
Yes.
and myself. All right, so we will pass on the option to purchase these properties. Okay, next on the agenda, Senior Affordable Housing Project, Massachusetts Local Initiative Program, AKA Friendly 40B, 403 Union Street, 6 Del Pret Ave, Holy Family Church site. Doug.
Thanks, Mike. I'll keep this very brief because we have a lot of really good consultants on the Zoom who are going to give you guys a full presentation. But in a nutshell, we were approached by developers that have been selected by the Holy Family Parish to develop what was previously their Catholic parochial school, which they're no longer operating. And they've selected this developer to purchase and develop this property into 27 one-bedroom low-income apartments for seniors in the community that could benefit from this. So they have a presentation with plans and drawings, and I'll really let them take it away. And the only kind of overall point I would make is, when Jen and I think Attorney Galvin was also on the initial discussion, we were very impressed with the team. They're clearly experienced, and they're going to preserve the historic nature of the exterior envelope. And I think what they're doing, fits within our mission to, get more appropriate affordable housing, the right size and scale. It's in an excellent location. Certainly Jen can talk more later if you want about kind of the integration with the rest of our master plan and Union Street planning. But generally, from what we've learned so far, it seems like something that is a good project. And they'll also talk a little bit about how this is what's referred to as a friendly 40B or a LIP, a local initiative program. So they're not just giving this to us as an FYI. I think they're going to seek our active support of the project with a letter of support so that it can be approved a little easier at the state level. So I'll let them get into it more, but I just wanted to give that overall background. And I'm not sure who's going to speak first, so I'll just let somebody jump in.
Thank you, Mr. Lapp. I'm Jennifer Conley of Conley and Partners, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight to present our plans for the former Holy Family School. As Mr. Lapp said, it is going to be 27 one-bedroom senior units, and these would be deed restricted, affordable for perpetuity. Our firm has a growing portfolio and considerable resources and experience. This includes the physical and financial turnaround of Springgate Apartments, which is at 52 Hanaway in Rockland, and that's a special limited partnership with the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority supports this project and appreciates the programs and services that we'll be able to offer the residents there, which would otherwise not be possible at a property this size. We also have the support, as Mr. Lapp said, of the Parish Council and their pastor, Father Hickey. Their group connected with the community purpose for their former school And they also want to preserve the historic nature of the buildings. So we've taken that on within our work. We are soon to submit historic tax credit applications at the state and federal level. And this has been supported by the local historical commission. Our funding combines different layers of state and federal financing. And we also have a syndicator in place to bring community-focused investors to the project. And then returning to the property itself, I'd like to turn things over to our architectural and engineering teams. We're going to start with Seeger Architects, followed by McKenzie Engineering Group. And then we'll have a brief overview of the affordability components from Joe Armstrong of MCR. And so with that, I'm going to turn things over to John Seeger and Julia Meridian.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us tonight. We're just going to give a general overview of the project, where we're at with the design now. That's going to include not just the architectural, but the civil engineer. And I'll speak on behalf of the landscape architect as well. I did do the screen share. Did that work for everybody?
Yes.
Oh, good. I worry about these things, but I think as far as yes, the existing school building, if we want to just start at the aerial view, can you see my cursor as well?
Yes.
Okay. Well, you guys are just as familiar, if not more so, with the site. But Union Street, we have the actual church and the rectory facing Union, and on Delpre we have the backside of the school. So essentially, this is the building that will be proposing the 27 one-bedroom units. I think while we're looking at this aerial view, just to orientate you when we go through the plans, we are utilizing this part of the parking. And I'll keep referring to the front of the building that faces the parking lot, which is north facing, because, you know, this is on Delpre, it's pretty dominant entrance. I'm sure it was well utilized, but for our purposes, it's a secondary means of egress. I think while we're on the site too, on the back of the building, the south side is, we'll be sharing some of the program that we're looking for the senior residents use. And as far as the existing building, Jennifer did touch on that we're seeking historic tax credits. We do a number of these projects where mostly the intent is to maintain the historical integrity of the building. And we really, for all practical purposes, we've been able to do that with our adaptive reuse projects, including this one. This building, I have to say, is a prime candidate for adaptive reuse. And I'll explain that to you a little farther. But as far as the exterior improvements are going, we're keeping all the fenestration, all the windows essentially the same. I think we're adding one double window in the, I keep calling it the front, but on the north facade, we're going to be doing facade improvements for the main entry and new signage change. But for the most part, it's all masonry restoration. It's pretty much just, we're replacing some doors. We're doing some site improvements as well. But as far as the exterior building itself, we're not really changing a whole lot. And I think as far as the site plan, Brad McKenzie, our civil engineer, will speak to that later, but we have an existing property survey that he'll be able to address a little farther into the presentation. Just to orientate you again, our front, I'm calling, is main entrance is right on the first floor, is right at this point. And we have parking in front of the building, which we're pulling back away from the building for some landscaping, which I'll show later on. But the main intent is to have, since the parking is on that side, is basically have the main entrance accessible for the residents into the existing lobby. We're keeping the commutative stair. It's basically just to this, connects to the second floor. But I think the part of the program we're looking at is to introduce some common space for the seniors. And one of the concepts we did was to have a community room directly on access with the main entry. And I think if you have any visitors come, they can socialize within the community room. There's a kitchenette, and also we're building on a library and computer lab, if you will, for the residents. We also introduced a elevator for accessibility at this point, as well as the mail room, which again, I think it's a social component for the seniors to gather. So we really centrally located all the shared common space in the center. We do have laundry facilities for the seniors. And while we're at this side of the building, there's a trash room that we have on each floor that we located adjacent to the dumpsters on the exterior, the existing dumpsters. And just as far as to keep the trash consolidated to one area and just to be able to move it directly outside is it was the reasoning behind locating it at that area. We also have an emergency generator as well as a transformer that we're going to have to locate and design for the building, mostly for life safety. The emergency generator, if the power goes out, it's the elevator still works, the lighting and refrigerators, that sort of, and heating, yeah. But as far as the first floor goes, it's what I was mentioning before. The school building is set up perfect for the reuse in the sense that there's a central double loaded corridor right now, and the existing classrooms are on either side of the corridor. And essentially those classrooms are going to become residential units for the most part. With historic tax credits too, they want us to consider to maintain certain interior features for the building, for the inside of the building as well. So as I mentioned, this works out great for the circulation of the building because we have two means of egress, one on each end, and then the double loaded corridor. I think we have, Julia, do we have, is it 8, 9, 10? We have 8 units on the first floor.
7 units on the first floor.
So it's 7, 8, 9, 8, no, 10. Okay, so 7 units on the first floor, and they're all 1-bedroom units. Again, we're constrained to the windows a little bit with creating the unit sizes and partitions, but these are fairly generous 1-bedroom units where they have the living space, dining, bedroom, and their bath. So you guys, can you see the plans pretty well? Do I have to enlarge, blow it up a little bit?
Fine to me.
They fine? Okay. Now I gotta scroll. So the first floor, oops. You know what, if you don't mind, I'll just quick. So the second floor, we have a handicap unit on the second floor and the third floor. Basically, we're required one 5% of the total units to be handicap accessible. And I think the third floor, you'll find is almost the same footprint as the second floor, with just residential units on the second, third floor. And then we're still working out the mechanical systems with basically to be able to have condenser units on top of the roof. These are not huge units. They're basically 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot. And we'll look at screening if it's part of your zoning requirements. But I don't think it'd be an issue because we're basically providing, we're not providing huge rooftop units. These are single condenser units for each unit, as well as the elevator shaft that has to protrude a couple feet above the roof line. And then just briefly on the exterior, again, we're doing the masonry restoration. We're still working on a new canopy and entrance signage for the main entrance. And we'll probably replace these doors for security. You know, obviously the building is going to be, I wouldn't say a secured facility, but it's going to be controlled security in a sense that they're going to be buzzed, people are going to be buzzed in. So we're working on the different type of FOD systems for the tenants. And I think as far as lighting to the exterior building, we are, you know, most of our designs were very conscientious about lighting, exterior lighting. We do all dark sky lighting, which essentially means it's downlit. It's just going to light the surface of the area that needs to be and not shoot light up into the sky. But really the other interesting improvement is the, which I'm calling the backside. The south side would be the community room to have French doors to access outside. And I'll show you a little bit when I get to the landscape plan about the exterior improvements. But if Brad is, I saw Brad was online. He's our civil engineer from McKenzie. If he can speak to some of your civil site utility drainage concerns.
Sure. Thanks, John. Brad McKenzie, McKenzie Engineering Group, we're the professional civil engineers and land surveyors for the project. John, could you scroll back to the Form A plan, which you had up previously, please? Just to give everyone there you go. So this proposal involves subdividing the property through an A&R subdivision plan to create a proposed Lot A, which would meet all of the dimensional requirements in the zoning bylaw. In this district, which is the R4 residential district, the minimum lot area is 32,670 square feet with 110 feet of frontage. So we exceed those requirements with our proposed Lot A. The remaining land has 118,572 square feet, and obviously enough frontage on Union to meet the requirements of the bylaw. The total parcel size presently is 3.63 acres. If we could proceed, I guess, to our site plan S1, John, which you just had up. So as John had mentioned earlier, the site proposal involves a reconfiguration of the curb cuts and the parking lot to create some segregation between the proposed residential use and the rest of the parking lot. The curb cut in the middle of the frontage along Dale Creek is going to be reconfigured, relocated. We're essentially using the same curb cut up to in the northern portion of the property. There's a reconfiguration or addition of a lot of green space on this in this proposal. The parking islands have been enhanced tremendously in size. The landscape plan that follows this plan, I believe, will show what the proposed surface treatments are and all the plantings within those islands. But essentially, this proposal involves dedicating 35 spaces to the proposed residential use. 27 spaces as calculated by the requirements in the bylaw. Although it is a 40B, we are meeting the requirements under the bylaw for parking for this use, which is a dwellings. It falls into the category dwellings for the elderly in section 415-35 for off-street parking requirements, with 8 visitor parking spaces which are located near the intersection of Del Prete and Exchange. And presently there are parking spaces in that location. The proposal involves the elimination of some other existing parking spaces closer to, I guess you could say it's the east side of the building, where a pedestrian loading space, a 10 by 30 loading space is proposed with a restriping of the existing crosswalk, an extensive network of cement concrete sidewalks around the perimeter of the building, as well as extending down to those visitor parking spaces near the intersection of Del Prete and Exchange Street. And as I'm sure John will discuss the landscape plan, there is a landscape courtyard area proposed in the area where those existing spaces are going to be eliminated. The proposal does also involve to the west side of the building along the lot line, dedicated dumpster generator pads to support the facility that will be fully enclosed with a 6-foot high vinyl fencing enclosure, a 6-foot high wooden privacy fence along the property line as well to provide some buffering to the residential uses along Exchange Street. If you look at, there's a lot coverage table on the plan, and what we've done to kind of simplify the analysis is we've designated the area to be redeveloped, even though a lot of this area wouldn't be within the perimeter of the proposed Form A lot. Just want to give you some sense as to what the net changes are for the site. And the site actually is going to result in, because of the addition of all the landscape islands, and a net increase in pervious coverage of about 3,000 square feet, which of course means there'll be a corresponding decrease in the peak rates of runoff and volumes of stormwater to the site. We have not yet really gotten into the details regarding the utility designs, as this plan is right now preliminary in nature. I guess that's it for the civil presentation.
All righty, Brad. I think, yeah, it's a good segue right into landscaping, because just as far as this plan just shows mostly the edges of the pavers. I just have to be able to, let me see, escape. Okay, just yeah, this first slide is really just to show the context again of the existing site, the entry, and the back area, which we talked about. And then this actual is where we're going to put the ramp in back to the dumpsters. The dumpsters are going to be shared with the church still as well. But as far as the actual landscape plan, I think I'm going to try and zoom in again. because I have a small screen. I don't know if you have if you guys have big screens, but mine's too small. So dynamic. So I think it was really nice. Michael D'Angelo, landscape architect. I just love what he does. He just brings whole nother layer to the project. But I thought it was a nice idea to create this, the island planters to kind of buffer, soften up the parking, just to begin with. I think is a real plus for the site. The other kind of big move too. Here's our main entry. We'll have some seating here, but for the most part, the perimeter, what he did was to have a walking area around the entire site, which, I just thought that was a really insightful move for him to think about, the seniors keeping mobile, walking. It's not, the most exciting path, but I mean, it's just a start because we have to have circulation around most of the building anyway. And he has buffered or provide low vegetation pretty much at the perimeter of the building as well. But like I said, we pulled the parking away from the building a little bit. But I think a few of the bold moves, which, working with Jennifer and Bill too, to offer these exterior amenities, outdoor seating, a pergola, which is adjacent. This is right off the community room. So the community room has lots of existing lights or windows, I should say. And so they have direct access to this outdoor seating area with a buffer. And they also created these little pockets, seating pockets. So, if a family member comes to visit, they could sit outside and have a little more private conversation, whether it's with the family or with, anybody in the community. And then as we progress down here, we did want to address van or basically car ride services for the seniors. And we just thought this might have been simple, a little more, I think, practical to have a curb cut, such Brad was talking about, a pickup and drop off for this entrance. The seniors could be waiting at this area and wait for the cab and come out here. I don't think we're limited to have drop off and pick up here, but it just seemed to create this nice little pocket here for them. The landscape architect also, as Brad mentioned, created 2 buffers at each corner of the building. This one is another seating area, potentially with a water feature. And we are looking, I'm sorry, the transformer is probably going to be, National Grid is going to make us do it on the street. But this will be highly buffered as well. We're going to make sure that you'll have to have access to one side of it, at least to the door. But I think we'll be able to landscape that just fine. Yeah, I think if we go to the next sheet, let me see, I can escape. He has I'm gonna go here. Yeah, Michael, again, deals with different materials and surfaces on the exterior. Some of the areas that we have for the pickups and drop-offs and seating areas would have precast pavers of this style. Some of the furniture, bench seating is a little lighter, would be this style. And he's got a pergola. Just an example where what we'd be thinking about over the exterior space in the community room. Even through in a bocce court, we haven't really vetted that totally with with Conley's, how it works with the seniors, if that's something they'd be interested in, but that would take the place of the 3 seating areas. But I think it's an all-around improvement to get people outside and enjoy the exterior space as well as the interior space. You know, I just, oh, there he is. He put the bocce court down here as an alternate. That would be at the 3 pockets. But again, these are just ideas that we have to vet out with the owners and progress from there. I'm pretty much, I think I covered most of the exterior stuff. Did I miss anything, Brad? I know you're muted, but
John, if you go one more, it's the plantings past the.
okay. Yeah, and again, we do this for a lot of projects where we create a palette, a sort of menu for vegetation, and just to anticipate what kind of flowering trees as well as shrubs that we would be considering for this project. You know, it's great having someone like that on board because they can think about certain trees that will not be, we call them dirty trees, that won't throw a lot of leaves, and then other trees that are, you know, invasive and that work well with blooming certain times of years. The other thing is the lighting on the exterior. Again, we're keeping most of the lighting close to the building shining down. We might have some landscape lighting, but I think we have to be cognitive of the residential neighborhood. So whatever we're doing is going to be low lighting, just primarily for the actual senior building. There is no lighting in the existing parking lot to date. And we are still considering low lighting for security in the parking lot, but it's just a matter of balancing whether or not we're just going to propose it here, closer to our building, and not do it there. But we'll do a photometric chart to make sure that no light is spilling into neighbors. I think we'll be very cognitive of that, but that pretty much sums up a lot of the design considerations we're presenting. Did Jennifer, was Joe Armstrong going to be speaking, or are we speaking for him?
I believe
on the
Joe's
line.
on the call.
Okay, because Joe's
Jennifer, can you hear me?
on the telephone.
I can. Thank you, Joe.
Great. I will start off to our Board of Selectmen with stressing the most important feature of this financial plan. We are not requesting any money from the local community. It's enough. You've created a wonderful downtown. We've noticed over the years the goals of your redevelopment committee in repurposing certain properties, improving the appearance. We believe that our plan will add to that, to the overall community plan, to bring more residential life to your downtown area, more vitality, more customers. And we're very pleased that the property qualifies for both state and federal historic tax credits. Because of that, unlike other properties I've worked on over my 30-year career, we are not requesting any money from local resources at all. It's enough to get your support for this conversion of the property. The primary sources will be a new mortgage from the Mass Housing Finance Agency. We already have a great letter of support from that agency to provide our mortgage financing. The aforementioned state and federal historic tax credits, and the most important source where your future, hopefully, letter of support from the Board of Selectmen would be for a 9% low-income housing tax credit application to the State Department of Housing Community Development, known as the DHCD. As you are all aware, there's great demand for all types of affordable housing in our community, especially during these troubled times, but especially for senior housing. And we believe it fits very well in the residential community, since we have immediately buffering the property single-family residences on Del Prete. I'm very pleased with our landscape design and accentuating the look on the Del Prete entrance. And again, it's going to make a beautiful little drive-in with greenery, sitting benches. One of the primary purposes of that design is the owners and consultants expressed to the design people on our team is that it become more attractive than it is right now to those Del Prete residents whom we hope to meet at future public forums. That's just a little bit down the line. We, of course, wanted to make our presentation to the board tonight. But again, the use, I know it's not financing, but we want to stress that the 27 apartments will all be deed restricted through the state DHCD. They have a standard in perpetuity use agreement. It'll be deed restricted. Conley and Partners has been and is a long-term holder of rental properties, affordable rental properties. But even if they ever decided to sell to another affordable housing operator, not even contemplated, I want to make clear, well, let's say 50 years from now, the company decides to do something like that. Well, they do their deed research and see it's got an in perpetuity use restriction. So my point is the town can be assured, and the citizens of the town, that this property will have no other use in perpetuity by legal deed restriction and state regulation for affordable senior housing. That term affordable, what does that mean? Well, 17 of the units will be restricted to applicants earning under 60% of median income, which is known in the trade as the tax credit low income level. That is under the broader 80% low income level is applied to 40B. 10 units, the remaining 10, will be restricted even further to applicants who are in the HUD extremely low income category. That means they earn less than 30% of median income. We're going to be able to do that with cooperation with both the DHCD, which serves as a statewide housing authority. We'll be requesting as many of the 10 as possible from the state for project-based vouchers, which means that they're directly contracted to the individual units. But in my experience, that's a tough demand these days. We're projecting 5 of the units will be project-based vouchers, and the remaining 5 we hope to cooperate as the owner has on Springgate on a waiting list with the housing authority. And to be clear, that's cooperation. There's no legal requirement to do so, but we have an excellent professional relationship earned over the years with our Springgate example in receiving, vetting, approving local holders of portable vouchers issued by the Rockland Housing Authority. We also had a similar conference call with them several months ago, and I don't want to speak for them, of course, but we're very pleased at their initial support for this, and of course they're going to see how things unfold. But we're unaware of any opposition in regard to local agencies, and if any comes up, of course, we hope to work with all of them as we progress in this property. As was mentioned earlier, this will be a friendly 40B, otherwise known as local initiative. Conley and Partners never pushes properties through communities that don't want them. That's why we chose this approach. Under friendly 40B, we can't proceed to the state DHCD until we get a Board of Selectmen letter of support, which we know requires a vote and requires support of the local citizenry, and that's what we're looking for. We look forward to having future concept meetings, well publicized, and in fact, I do want to stress very early on, your kind State Representative David DeCoste offered his support with a letter And that's part of our package I think we sent to the Board of Selectmen. Mr. DeCoste has kindly offered to support our application with face-to-face meetings when that becomes possible down the line. Until then, remote meetings with the DHCD. We appreciate the representative's support for our project and for community development in this community. Let's see. I think that covers the financial and affordable housing parts of our presentation. Jennifer, did I miss anything you'd like to add?
No, Joe, I think you really hit on everything for us. We'd like to turn it back to the board and see if there's any questions that you might have for us before we leave tonight.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you
you.
guys for the thorough presentation. I'll turn it over to the other members of the board. Anybody have any questions, concerns for the developers? Your audio, there's something going on with your audio. It's scrambled.
Is that better?
Well, that's de-scrambling. Could I say one thing? We are aware that one of the Board of Selectmen actually attended the former Holy Family Elementary School. So we were very pleased to hear that. I actually have two young relatives who live a few blocks away who also received their elementary education there. Our name, Schoolhouse Apartments, by the way, was chosen very carefully to reflect the history, the very positive history in your town of generations of young people being educated there, hence Schoolhouse Apartments, Rockland.
I had 4 sons graduate from there.
Wow, some more history. That's great.
I was also the
And especially,
I was also the basketball coach, one of them, assistant.
oh wow.
Larry, let's not go down that path, because you were my basketball coach there, and I remember it not being the funnest years of my life. So,
Well, you look how well you grew up, though.
yeah, thanks. I'm sure. Hey, let's go back to Rich for a second. Rich, is your audio good? You try again.
Yeah, me.
No.
Yeah, it's real. It sounds like you're underwater.
It wasn't anything.
Okay.
Just about doing the maintenance of the building. I was down there.
But I think what he said is who's going to be responsible for doing the maintenance on the building?
Yeah.
Hi, thank you.
I'll
So our
address. Go ahead, Jeff. Go.
Thank you, Joe. Our other property is Springgate Apartments, and that's about a mile from this site. So what we're going to do is have the site staff there. And we've actually had their team come down, their facilities director, to take a look at the school. He's working with us on the workshop. He's going to have technicians that would be back and forth to that site, but there would also be a full-time person that's a porter. So they would be doing the daily cleaning. And then the technicians would come as needed to respond to either just general maintenance or emergency situations. The building would be tied in. So if you were to call the office, it would ring at Springgate, and we would have the benefit of their full teams. That includes their resident service providers, which we talked about earlier, that would offer programming and services to the residents. And then that would also be their occupancy staff. So the group that would do all of the tax credit certifications.
That cover you, Rich? Okay. Okay, anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, so I guess I have a few thoughts. And number one, I just want to thank you, Conley Partners, I believe, for actually proposing something that really fits. I think fits with the Holy Family School, what fits with Union Street, and frankly, something that really fits with, I think, the impact that we always know Holy Family has always had in Rockland. And that's hugely important, and I just want to thank you for that. I just have one quick question. I mean, I love everything you presented. I just have one quick question in terms of the accessible units. I noticed that they were going to be on the second, and third floor, and I'm just wondering, I understand you're proposing the construction of an elevator, but I'm just wondering why Oh, like, I guess, why wouldn't the accessibility of those be on the first floor rather than the second and third?
Within the design process, we're asked to provide diversity of where those units are, so not to limit them just to the
Yeah, well,
first
okay, that
floor.
makes-
John, do you want to talk further on that?
This is
Yeah,
Julia. We also have more space to give them on the other floors. The first floor has so much of the common and utility going on that we were able to give them a large units on the second and third floor. And like Jennifer said, the diversity is asked for, not to have them all on the same floor.
Yeah, no, I didn't even think of that. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, like, thank you. Like, I am like full, like, and ready to support everything on this. I mean, I think it really makes sense. I love how like so many aspects of it really fit with our zoning already. Oh, and however the town can work with you to make this work, I think we should. So thank you.
Good
I
to
also
hear.
want to
Thank you.
thank you guys for your presentation tonight. It was very thorough and interesting, and I think it's a win-win for the town of Rockland and our senior population here as well. I just had one question. It may be premature, but when are you looking to break ground on this project?
Thank you. That would be a timetable that's set by the different funding rounds. So when the funding comes through, we're able to then move into our construction scheduling. We would have this construction schedule limited to about a year, but again, I'll turn that over to the Seeger team to provide more details.
Well, what's nice, this is John Seeger again, Seeger Architects. What's nice about working with Connolly's too, it comes with a contractor, a general site supervisor / project manager. And that's Seamus Finney, who we're working with now on construction costs and basically the overall, sort of renovation aspects of this. But as far as schedule wise, I think Jennifer hit it. It's probably just about a year worth of construction. The stop and start date, I don't know offhand. Jennifer, I don't want to speak for you, but our goal is to have pretty much the pricing set by spring. When I say, we're getting up to spring, but April. And I think from there, it's really up to when you guys get your funding can start. But you're right, it's just about a year. It might be 13 months with exterior improvements, but that's how long I think the construction timeframe is.
Great, thank you.
Jennifer, I'd like to address that a little bit further. Since we are applying for multiple public, state, and federal funds, we typically like to project 2 full years to get all the funding lined up with formal approvals. Why is that? Some of the funding is on annual rounds, some of it's every 6 months. More importantly, in the last 10 years or so, there's been such demand for 9% low-income housing tax credits that typically 3 times as many applicants as those that can be approved submit applications in any year. It is very common and to be expected that even superlative applications to the state are pushed off another year because of insufficient funding, in which case they issue a support letter saying, good job, we like your plan. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough money in this year's round, but you have a priority for next year's round. So that's why it's a little tough to project because the construction 1-year cycle, in fact, we allow 18 months for overages and for unexpected construction contingencies. But I would say within 3 years would be, from my 30 years of experience, I think it's a practical goal that within 3 years we could potentially have it up and running. And that, I think, is a realistic goal for us. Of course, these are uncertain times we're facing, and with state employees working at home and such, everyone's working well with us at the state and federal level. But we don't want to overshoot, and say we'll have it up in 2 years. So I'd say 3 years would be a good projection. And we will keep the Board of Selectmen and the Town Manager's Office and any other town committees that will be involved in the review process fully apprised as we hear more specifics from the state. For instance, when we get a 9% tax credit approval letter, we'll send it over. We'll let you know. And similarly, any major moves along the way, we'll be coordinating with whoever the town administrator tells us to coordinate with. Again, all part of our friendly 40B Conley and Partners process I've been proud to be part of for all my years consulting for the firm. Many years. I think 20 years I've been consulting for Conley and Partners and always pleased with the end result.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, so if nobody has any further questions, I just, again, like to thank you guys for the thorough presentation tonight. I'm excited about the vision that you guys have for my alma mater. With that said, though, I don't think it would be necessarily appropriate tonight to vote on support of this until we at least hear from public input first. So we'll allow that portion of the process to take place, and then we'd invite you guys back as we get closer, and we put that to a vote.
That sounds great. Could I stress further that the representative the Coast mentioned that he has a monthly public forum at the Senior Center for general topics of what's happening at the state that could affect Rockland, and he kindly offered to put us on an agenda for the first public hearing on the project like that. I know it's proximate to the building, and seniors are on distribution lists and notifications and such. So we think that might be a good first meeting. And again, we will notify the Board of Selectmen and the Town Manager's Office formally of any scheduled meetings well in advance.
Sounds great. Keep us informed. We wish you well.
Thank you very much for hearing our proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Signing off. Bye-bye.
All right. Next on the agenda, economic development priority setting.
Thanks, guys.
Assistant Town Administrator, where's Jen? Jen Constable, there you are. All right. Jen,
Thank
go-
you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I hate asking this question, but can everybody see this slide okay?
Mhm.
Thanks. So I just wanted to provide the board with a somewhat brief update as it relates to economic development activity in the town. You know, when Doug and I came on board, there were a number of projects kind of underway, and there was a significant focus on economic development. To begin, I just want to kind of address the question, what is economic development? I think it's often used as a catch-all. So just as we proceed through this conversation, I want to make sure everyone is thinking about economic development in the same way. Typically, economic development includes three categories: job creation and retention, which is job trends, looking at job trends, job training skills and needs, and industry needs as they relate to a specific community. Growth and development of places. This is one area where there's the most significant amount of work happening in Rockland. So this is, whether it's for work and or play, creating clear regulations for real estate development. We have some of that activity occurring right now with the Gateway Overlay District drafting. Facilitating investment in businesses, leveraging private and public investment, and creating housing opportunity. Housing is an important component of economic development. And then lastly, community development, which is creating choices for health, education, mobility, recreation, safety, and shopping. One of the reasons that this topic and this update is happening now is a change in the state's application for programs. One that the board might be most familiar with is the MassWorks program. So there is now a community one-stop for growth application. And what this program does is it takes 10 grant programs and puts it into one application. This is a huge benefit for communities and developers. I think they dwindled the questions down, I forget the exact numbers, but to just under a third of what previous multiple applications required. The programs are across 3 agencies, the Office of Economic Housing and Economic Development, DHCD, which you heard about a little while ago, Department of Housing and Community Development, as well as Mass Development. The town has benefited from programs out of each of these agencies in the past. The application will look at more than one grant opportunity for a program at one application opportunity, as well as provide guidance to from state partnerships. The process is revised and sort of flipped from what it had previously been. The previous applications were due late summer. Now it's the process is sort of reversed. So in the past, a community would submit an application, try and figure out which program was best for a project, try reaching out to staff to get feedback, to provide information on a proposed project, then go ahead and submit an application. If an application was approved, that's great. If it was denied, the community would then have to reach back out to the applicable agency to get feedback as to why an application was denied. Go back a following year and reapply with those adjustments. Now it's completely reversed, which is great. So the one-stop process now takes what are referred to expression of interests. So a community can provide or submit up to 5 expressions of interest. So these are 5 projects and provide them to multiple agencies to review and provide feedback ahead of submitting an application. So this gives the community or the applicant the opportunity to tweak the project and know what phase or what is the best grant opportunity out there for a specific project. Full applications will be due in May through June, and then awards are anticipated from October through November. So what is happening in Rockland, and what are some of the projects that we're considering right now submitting expressions of interest for? In the category of growth and development, there's the Estes property, 225 West Water Street. I believe most of the board is familiar with this site. This required an extensive amount of environmental cleanup and demolition. There's still a small amount of remediation that is required, and the program that's applicable to this site would be the Brownfields grant. A.W. Perry has a project proposal. The town is currently working with the developer in looking at a potential overlay district. Last year, the town submitted a MassWorks application for infrastructure, road infrastructure work, which would improve the area around not only the A.W. Perry site, but an area of heavy traffic congestion along Hingham Street. That's a MassWorks application. Union Street revitalization, there's been a significant amount of planning work that's happened around redeveloping and revitalizing Union Street, and has benefited from the Mass Downtown Initiative grant programs. Water and sewer capacity, this specific issue has currently received a site readiness grant, and that was in partnership with the South Shore Chamber of Commerce and 4 other neighboring communities to look at water and sewer constraints and opportunities. Opportunities specifically that the communities might be able to pursue as a region to unlock priority development opportunity. And then once those opportunities are identified, there is the additional opportunity to submit an infrastructure application through MassWorks for the actual facility and infrastructure upgrades. That's not all that's happening in Rockland. In the area of community development is another component of economic development where the town has been busy over the past couple of years and continues to be so. So most recently, the town received a local rapid recovery planning grant that is to assist the community in its recovery, COVID recovery efforts as it relates to economic development. That was a recent award. That work has not yet begun, but it'll establish a database specific to Rockland that will direct the community as to where it should focus its recovery efforts and also provide some specific action items. Signage and Wayfinding was another MDI grant that the town is currently working through right now. CDBG and CDBG CV, these are not part of the one-stop application, but I did include them in the presentation just as a reminder, as this is additional economic development work that's happening in town, most specifically as it relates to the micro enterprise support. Marketing and tourism, the town recently sponsored an application again from another great partner, South Shore Chamber of Commerce, to submit a Mass Office of Business Development Regional Pilot Grant Program. And this, if awarded, will focus on marketing and tourism for the region. And then Reimagine Rockland, I believe you're all familiar with as well. That was also the benefit of an MDI grant. So they still have one more bucket of economic development category to go through, but as you can see, all of these grants that have been either applied to and or awarded were individual applications for individual projects that will now be lumped into this one application, and again with feedback from the state relative to those applications. And then last is job creation and retention. This is not something that the community has necessarily specifically focused on and is often seen when there are partnerships in a community that do focus on skills training and job creation. However, all the work that is proposed specifically, or especially the infrastructure and actual development work, has the indirect benefit of creating jobs in the community, and that is certainly an economic development benefit. So again, this is something I expect to come out of the support, the local rapid recovery planning grant work, is to identify if in fact skills training and job creation is a need that's recognized in the community. We're seeing some of the highest unemployment rates since COVID began. Infrastructure and development projects, that would be a MassWorks application. And then it is just being discussed more frequently that job creation and skills development is becoming more of a regional priority. There's discussion as that being one of the areas of opportunity to come out of the pandemic crisis. This is just a chart just for a little background information relative to the development continuum. So this is the blueprint, if you will, for the life cycle of a project, which begins from the left side of the screen and more of the planning and zoning and site preparation, and then as it moves forward to actual development. Rockland actually has a lot of projects in the pre-development, building and infrastructure stage. In order to get there, there has to have been the first three categories of work undertaken. I think you heard in the previous 40B proposal that these projects are not quick projects. A lot of economic development, community development, site development requires a lot of diligence and a lot of patience, but you guys have made some tremendous progress over the years. If once an expression of interest is submitted and or an application, but hopefully before you get to the actual application process, if the project does not fit well into one of the 10 grant programs, the state will refer the project to some of these other programs and some of the other agencies. So again, it's sort of a win-win for communities to submit the expressions of interest and get as much information at the onset of the work as opposed to the end, and then having to wait an additional year to circle back through and seek funding. So this is just, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the considerations for determining priorities. And again, this is really just an update for the board. You know, once we wrap up this discussion, it's not necessarily, we're not necessarily looking for the board to set priorities. I think you've done that in adopting the Union Street action strategy, in the recent master plan, in your housing production plan. And so a lot of this work is coming from those plans. But some of the challenges that have been identified, you know, throughout vetting some of these projects, as well as some of the planning efforts, you know, the biggest one is the water and sewer capacity. And so it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see the results of the site readiness work that will identify some of the opportunities to address capacity issues. Staff capacity, I did have to put on here because the town unfortunately does not have a planning department or a conservation department or a town engineers on staff. And so it just adds to the timeline sometimes, but just of note, no complaint, just of note.
Very dramatic.
And then just post-COVID uncertainty. You know, a lot in the world of economic development, community development, real estate, I think pretty much everything these days, transportation, there's still a lot of uncertainty as to what the world will look like post-COVID, but there is certainly a lot of planning and discussion happening, you know, over the past few months, and it continues now to make sure that communities, you know, as much as possible from the outside, have the capacity to address the needs and are able to identify the needs affecting those communities. And then when we're looking at projects are brought forth either to Doug or I or a specific department and ultimately the board, some of the goals, again, these are goals that are drawn from a lot of the planning work and public discussions that have happened over the past few years, is one, maintaining housing affordability within the community. Making sure that we leverage public and private investments, or I should say leverage, well, public and private investments. So I just talked a lot about some of the public investment, and I think you just heard from a private investment. Improving transportation options, that is something that supports economic development, particularly around retail and housing and job creation. Those, for better or worse, there's been a lot of focus on transportation conversations of late. Rockland is certainly well in the mix of those discussions. And then just continuously improving the quality of life. That's something that I'm not sure there should ever be an end to things. It's always great to see communities continuing to thrive and improve. And then just lastly, just a couple of projects to note in terms of future economic development opportunities. There's redevelopment of the Lincoln School, additional placemaking projects, Hearts of Park development, as well as Reed's Pond. And each of those fall well within the categories previously discussed as they relate to economic development. And that is all I have this evening, but I'm happy to take any questions. I know I ran through that relatively quickly.
Anybody have any questions for Jen?
Mike, could I just say one thing real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
I just want to thank Jen for what she's doing in this aspect of her job, because this is not the only thing that she does for the town. And it's, you know, she is able to kind of distill it into kind of pretty kind of simple and easy to understand, pieces, but each one of these things is a lot of work and it's a lot of time especially. And so I want to thank her for what she's doing, and also just for like the rest of the board and the public to understand that while it may look relatively, simple in the PowerPoint, there's a lot of work that goes behind even just synthesizing, understanding and prioritizing and making the right connections. And I just want to thank her for her efforts on that.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Doug, because these are a lot of the projects that we continue to hear questions regarding. Some of these items have been on these lists for a number of years, and obviously, COVID and loss of funding has contributed to those projects somewhat being, at least in the public's mind, being somewhat swept aside. It's good to know, Jen, that you're still on top of them. I was glad to see Estes come up on the list, because that's something that we were working on, I think, prior to you and Doug getting to town, and we made a lot of movement on it, and we thought we'd have redevelopment opportunities almost right away, and then that just kind of fell to the wayside, at least from where I could tell. And it's good to know that you're still working on it. In redevelopment of Lincoln School, we had put an article together a few years ago at town meeting to have the building taken down, and the residents voted to keep the building up and not approve that article. So, and that recently just came up again, where people were asking what the plan was for the Lincoln School. And in all honesty, we're obviously looking to redevelop it at some point, but with a global pandemic going on, there's not any funds really available for these projects that have been sitting there, I think, for a while. But it's great to know that you've been on top of it, Jen. And I appreciate the hard work and the effort and the presentation that you put together for us. And with that, if anybody else has any more questions, Rich, I think I just saw you unmute yourself. We're going to try you again. No. Rich, you want to try calling in on your phone?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Mike?
Yeah, no, I just want to say this is exactly why we have the team who we have. I mean, in terms of, Jen and Doug and Biz, and now I'm sounding like Larry, but you like that? But no, I mean, seriously, I mean, as you mentioned, Mike, we, as a board and as a town, these issues have been our priority for the last 3 to 4 years now. And I mean, I think they do take time. I do think we've done a lot of really good and really cohesive planning. And now I think, as I think we all know, we're at a point where we need to focus on the regional infrastructure and the funding of those infrastructure aspects. Especially in terms of the water and sewer. We can have plans every day, all day, but until we really, in my view is, when the state really, gets its act together to actually help us identify those solutions as a regional entity, I think we're going to be kicking a lot of our tires, because the work we've done on Union Street, I think the work we've done and the work that Larry started with the housing production plan and where we are tonight, actually having a friendly 40B that's going to provide a critical mass on Union Street, in a really good and a really quality critical mass, I think is huge. So, I just want to thank Jen for all her work and keeping these efforts going, especially now. Yeah, they need to continue, but I think they're on a really good path because of Jen. So thank you, Jen.
Anybody else? Larry, Kara?
You guys are doing a great job. That's why we hired you. Because we knew we were getting what we were getting when we hired you. And we got exactly what we hired you guys for, and for that, we're heroes. But something, the real heroes are the guys that are doing the job. We got you the spot. You're doing the job. Thank you all. Seriously, and that goes right across town hall and to every department in the town, because fire department, the police department, highway department, everything is just so damn organized, and I hate to use the term, but we are, and everything's working so well, even with COVID, and it's because we have pillars. We have pillars holding the town up, and I'm looking at a whole bunch of them right on the screen tonight, and an awful lot of them that are in the background, still doing their jobs. So keep up the good work, and we thank you. I'm set.
Okay, Kara, I saw you unmuted.
I don't have any questions, but thank you, Jem, for your presentation. It was thorough as always.
And Rich, I saw you joined on phone. Are you, any comments? You're muted though.
Can you hear me now?
Beautiful, beautiful.
Can you? All right. So I'm unmuted. So I just want to say, Jen, thank you. You know, the development that we're seeing happening in town isn't by accident, you know, and for the first time ever, we've actually, while you have a million other tasks to do in your role, we finally have someone in town that is putting this to the forefront, organizing it, marketing it, making sure that developers are aware of what's going on. And I just see so many positive things moving in the town. You know, obviously the water and sewer infrastructure becomes, you know, the elephant in the room that we have to address. But all the things that are happening, you know, when I see that list of the Estes property, the Lincoln School, what we're talking about, you know, at Reed's Pond, Hartson Park, you know, it's hitting the gamut, right? It's looking to develop and bring in key developers to help the economic engine in this town, but also at the same time looking at opportunities for the townspeople to actually enjoy the town, you know, and even part of the school project and what's going to happen to the Jefferson School, you know, additional fields and park space, and you know, it's rounding out this community, and again, without a vision and without someone leading this doesn't happen. So thank you.
Okay. So seeing no other comments, you know, as I already said, Jen, thank you, appreciate it. Keep us informed on all of this, because believe it or not, we are asked questions about every single one of the projects that you listed. And I'm sure now that you presented some different projects, I'm sure we'll be asked questions about that as well. So whatever you can do to keep us informed, that's great. And let us know if you need anything from us.
Will do. Thanks, Mike. And if I could just quickly add, you know, this is the fruits of all your labor over the past couple of years, and leadership out of every department as it relates to development projects. Everyone is a really fantastic team player on it. And I just wanted to, you know, we wanted to highlight this work tonight primarily because, you know, that's always in the back of our heads with COVID in particular. COVID's obviously taken front and center stage, but to let everybody know that this work, it actually is continuing to move forward as best we can. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. All right, moving on the agenda. Draft list of May 2021 town meeting warrant articles. Doug.
Thanks, Mike. I'm just sharing my screen now, and I thought I'd present just, this is a very rough list of what we think the annual town meeting warrant might look like. I'll just kind of very quickly run down the list, mainly just to make sure that I'm not forgetting anything or you guys didn't have something else in mind. The budget, of course, Article 2, and again, these article numbers aren't necessarily set in stone, but for purposes of tonight, number 2 is something that Biz and I have been talking about recently. I think I may have mentioned, and I want to talk a little bit more tonight, which is the establishment of a new capital stabilization fund. So just essentially think of it as an additional stabilization fund, but to be dedicated towards savings specifically for capital items, things that are too big just to purchase outright, but too small to really, do a debt exclusion and borrow and pay interest over multiple years. So we have a specific example of something we want to save for. When I get to the budget, we can talk about that. 3 and 4 would be establishing water and sewer department enterprise funds. I've talked about those at previous meetings. Biz and I have spoken with the water department about that, and they are receptive to it. They agree it makes sense. I've not had time to meet with the sewer commissioners about this item yet. They're still pretty busy, trying to hire a new sewer superintendent. So we're gonna do our best to communicate with them and hopefully have a consensus and to get it on the warrant for this upcoming May. But if we run out of time, that's something we can do at a later town meeting. You're already aware, I think, of the South Shore Regional School District, South Shore Tech in Hanover. They're looking to to get authorization for, I think it was roughly maybe an $18 million debt exclusion across all their member towns for roofing and other work. There's no financial impact to the town in FY22. This would just be an authorization that all the member towns would need to approve in order for them to kind of pursue their project, to get state funding, et cetera. Last town meeting, we acquired through the Community Preservation Act, we acquired an excellent parcel of land abutting Hartsuff Park that we used to expand the acreage of our park. So this article would just place an open space restriction on it, which is something that when you use CPA funds to buy open space, you should do. So could have done that last year, but we'll just do that now. Jen mentioned earlier the zoning that we've been working on with A.W. Perry for a pretty dramatic, I shouldn't say dramatic, but an important overlay district that would allow for mixed uses. And we're calling it the Gateway Mixed Overlay District because it would be the gateway to town off the highway. So we're hoping to get that to the planning board shortly so that the planning board can have their public hearings. And then if it makes it through that process, then if the board wanted, you would put that on the warrant. We had to redo the floodplain bylaw. As you recall, we had that ready to go at the last annual town meeting, but FEMA pulled it at the last minute just because of problems other communities had with COVID and not being able to get it adopted in time. So that's redone and we'll have that ready. This number 9, I actually think we'll be able to take off. The State Attorney General's office was working with our town clerk and just finalizing various pieces of things that were passed at prior town meetings to make sure that the state approved them. And they just asked the question whether the town had adopted these 2 general laws. And we looked and it turns out we've not adopted it. It has to do with whether filing dates or deadlines happen to fall on a weekend. And if they do, that affects whether the due date should be pushed off to the next Monday or not. I'm not convinced we really even need to adopt this, but I'm just putting it on there just in case. We're going to evaluate it a little bit further. And I'll have a better explanation if we do need to adopt them or not. CPA articles, I haven't seen any. One thing that we've been talking about is this land acquisition abutting Reed's Pond next to Spring Lake Cemetery. I know we all are very anxious to do this. I don't think we're going to be able to get it done in time for this May. We're still doing the due diligence with the title work because this would have to be subdivided off the cemetery parcel, and we just need to make sure there's clear title to anything that we get voter approval to purchase. So that's looking less and less likely for this May, which means it will most likely just be next year, which is fine. The land's not going anywhere. And I haven't heard of any other CPA articles yet, but I could be out of the loop. So I'll talk to Derek Ewell and find out from him. Then we have a whole number of capital articles. I'm gonna, maybe what I'll do is I'll go through these in more depth when I go through the budget, because I'm gonna give an update on our recommended uses of free cash. But we have a number of good capital articles that we'll be able to fund. And that's all I have for a rough list of town meeting warrant articles, unless any of you have any questions or comments or can think of anything I may have forgotten. And of course, we have time to update this, but I just wanted to get a list out for preliminary discussion.
Anybody questions, concerns, anything you noticed on it? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Doug, other new business not reasonably anticipated?
I have none.
Okay. Number 5, old business, COVID-19 update, testing site and status of vaccine requests.
Sure. So I'm going to do my best here to cover a number of different things, kind of as simply as I can. As far as our COVID numbers go, we currently have 128 active cases in town that the Board of Health is monitoring. And since the beginning, we've cleared over 1,212 cases in the community. I did forward to the board a notice that I sent out to all of the employees in Town Hall. Unfortunately, we have had a number of positive COVID cases in Town Hall, and everybody's taken the appropriate actions with, quarantining and testing and all the appropriate steps. One department did have to close for a period of time, and staff that were able to were working as hard as they could remotely to make sure all the business kept getting done, and they're back online now. But some of our departments, as you know, are very small, just, 1, 2, or 3 people in the department. So we're doing our very best, and we're being very careful. But I just want to let you know and the public know that, during all this, we're keeping services going, and we're going to keep our current procedures in place, which is to get as much of our work done as possible remotely, by email, telephone, fax, US mail, you name it. And we're only having face-to-face meetings with customers if there's literally no other way that the business can be conducted. So we've been able to get everything done so far. So that's a really good thing. I'll share my screen again, just to highlight the testing that was done before and what we're going to do again. So this again is a flyer for the second round of testing that we're going to do for the community. It's going to be next weekend, 20th and 21st at Memorial Park School. It's a drive-through. No appointments are necessary. We'll post again on the town website, and we'll push it out on social media. There's a form, a registration form that people should fill out ahead of time. So when you hit the drive-through, you have that paperwork ready, you hand it to the people, and you'll get right through very, very quickly. Again, there's no cost. They'll bill insurance, and if insurance covers it, then that's fine. And if insurance doesn't cover it, the testing company has a federal grant which will cover it. So there's no out-of-pocket cost to the individual. I want to give a real shout out and thank you to our health agent, Delshawn Flip, for this. She's really led the effort to get testing done. And in particular, after our first weekend of testing, which, maybe it's a good thing that the demand was not overwhelming. The testing company was not willing to come back, but she really fought extremely hard to get them to come back, and we're getting them again for this upcoming weekend. So I really want to thank Deli for her efforts on the testing front. And then next, I wanted to briefly talk about the whole vaccine situation, because I know that many in the community are confused about it and frustrated. Now, you've probably been, reached by some members of the community as well. So the state has set up a multi-phase system. Phase 1 was healthcare workers, first responders. And now we're into the top tier of phase 2, which are folks 75 and older. And I know people are frustrated that the town of Rockland, we're not able to host vaccine clinics. And I want to say as clearly as possible, I want everyone in the public to understand the town has been working tirelessly to try to secure a vaccine for the town of Rockland. Again, our health agent, Delshawn Flip, and especially our fire chief, Scott Duffy, the two of them have been working nonstop. They are working every week. I talk to them on weekends about this and nights. They are literally doing everything that they can. And to find a sort of a good way to explain sort of what's happening at the state level, I want to share a screen with you so you can see exactly what we're dealing with. So we attend multiple webinars and Zoom meetings every week with the state, different officials, generally the Department of Public Health, and every other week with the Lieutenant Governor and folks from the MMA. And you can see the MMA they published a summary of one of the more recent meetings, and you can see exactly what they're highlighting. State and local officials discuss COVID vaccine challenges. And I just want to read an excerpt of it so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. The public doesn't have to take my word for it. I'm going to start right here. Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito and Jana Ferguson, the Assistant Commissioner for the Department of Public Health explain the state vaccine strategy, which prioritizes the high volume mass vaccination sites currently operating in Boston, Danvers, Foxborough, and Springfield, followed by regional vaccination sites, healthcare providers, and retail pharmacy locations. State officials are seeking to keep the logistics manageable while guarding against potential waste and scarce vaccine doses. Quote, if every community set up a clinic, we would not have enough doses or the bandwidth to manage that, Polito said. We think the regional approach is more efficient for the COVID-19 Command Center to be able to determine how to distribute the doses. So since that time, we've still been continuing to fight and, try to get as much, it's just to get vaccine. I was gonna say as much as possible, but, we're essentially not getting any.
Could you share that page across the town social media platforms?
Yeah.
Just for the residents, just so that we have something to direct them to when the question inevitably comes up again?
Sure. And, since that time, as we've been continuing to request, over 1,000 vaccine doses every week, and we haven't received any, we inquired again. And I'm just going to read a direct quote from the Department of Public Health via email to our Board of Health. Right now, boards of health that have not been receiving vaccine should not expect to receive any in the immediate future. The supply is simply not sufficient to meet the demand in the existing capacity. So there's literally nothing more we can do. And I don't want to say that in a way that sounds trite. We are going to continue to work and fight to get vaccine. I think we're seeing some changes in that there's more vaccine that's out now at retail pharmacies. I saw an email from DPH on Friday that said statewide, I believe there were 10,000 available appointments at CVS's across the Commonwealth. And the state has faced a lot of pressure and criticism for how they've been rolling out how the public can sign up for the vaccine. And if you go to the mass.gov site and you go to the vaccine page, you're now able to actually put in your zip code and it will immediately populate a list of the sites closest to you that have doses and appointments available. So they're trying to make it more user-friendly, but they've just made it very clear they simply don't have the vaccine available to give it to all the towns. So they're prioritizing, the mass regional vaccine sites. So I wanted to be very clear on that. It's not a lack of effort. We are, when we have regular meetings with Chief Duffy and Delshawn Flip and a number of other key town staff, we're advocating for the town as best we can. And when the supply is there, we have, it's called an EDS plan. I've mentioned before, emergency dispensing sites. Once we get the supply, we activate our EDS site and we'll be able to do it. But we need the vaccine in order to be able to make it happen. I think that's it on the COVID update, unless the board has any questions. And I know Jen and Biz and Chief Duffy are on the call in case they want to add anything, but hopefully that was pretty clear.
Anybody have any questions, concerns? Okay. Just, I know you've been working on it. I know Scott has been working on it. And I know Delhi has been working on it. Just want to emphasize it wasn't for lack of effort on you guys' part, and that's what you were getting at, obviously. I was disappointed when we talked earlier in the week about the state's position on it. But in hindsight, it does make a little bit of sense, regionalizing it right now, whereas the supply is so low. But I'm sure you guys and Scott and Delhi will continue to push forward and continue to make the requests to get the vaccine into the town, and for that moment that eventually they do say yes. So hopefully that comes up soon. Scott, any comments on this?
Maybe while Scott's unmuting, I'll just add that, he's very passionate about looking out for the residents of the town of Rockland. And I'll say it publicly, there's a couple times that may have tried to mute him a little bit because he can get pretty fired up, and looking out for our residents. And if people are wondering why the fire chief's even involved, I'll say two things real quick, and he's unmuted, so I'll let him speak for himself. One is he was instrumental in getting our first responders vaccinated, which is a key part of phase one. But then as we get to the larger vaccination efforts, it's kind of a dual effort. The board, everything has to flow through the boards of health, because that's the entity the state recognizes to be able to order the vaccines and receive the vaccines and make the determinations. But then once to operationalize it, that's where the chief comes in. He's the emergency management director, and that's what all his training is all about. Emergency operations, and he's excellent at that. So that's why it's kind of a combination of both efforts. And with that, I'll stop talking and let him speak for himself.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah, we're trying our hardest. We keep getting denied. I mean, it's very frustrating working with the state on this. They have one idea on how it needs to get done, and I think a lot of the emergency management directors and the boards of health and fire chiefs have the other way of getting this done. And the ultimate goal is just to get the vaccine into the residents and into the state residents. So hopefully a better plan will come out, and when it does, and when we get vaccine, we'll be ready to hit the ground running. So just know that we are trying. When this meeting does get posted, or if you're talking to anybody, any of your neighbors, grandparents, parents, any relatives, there are plenty of appointments at the Marshfield site, at the Foxborough site. I think Foxborough had 1,500 open appointments for tomorrow or the day after. So there's plenty of opportunity. It's just getting those people down there. And I think that's where the big struggle for me is we're asking residents that, maybe don't drive. They only may go a mile or two a day, if that. So, we're asking them to drive 40 miles to Foxborough. I don't think is appropriate. If we were talking the 30, 40-year-old ranges, 50-year-old ranges to go and get the vaccines, absolutely. But we're dealing with a population that, number one, some of them don't even have computers to sign up for. So, stress that there's the state 211, very similar to 911. But I stress that it's 211 for the public to call to set up appointments or to get vaccine information if they do not have a computer. So that being said, we're going to keep trying, and the ultimate goal is to get that vaccine into people's arms. So that's what we're going to do when we get it.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it. Okay, anything else on this topic, guys? Okay, moving on. FY22 budget update, general overview. Doug?
Yep, thanks, Mike. I thought I would go on the operating budget. A few numbers have changed. We're continuing to get updated information. I'm not going to go through that tonight, because it's almost every day that we get some new information. So unless it's something dramatic, I'm not going to get into that now. But I thought that now that our free cash has been certified, and Biz and the rest of the financial team and I have had a chance to put together sort of an initial recommendation for that, I thought I would go over it with you now. So I'm sharing my screen, and you'll see right up at the top, our certified free cash is 2.1 million, which is excellent, given the fact that we were in the financial crisis we were at. The spending freeze and all the other actions that were taken was really critical in helping us generate this. These items up at the top are things that just for lack of a better term, saying, we really need to take it right off the top, fund them right away. So contractual buyouts, this 125,000 would be on top of what the balance currently is for employees that retire and leave service, and it's the amount that's legally owed to them. Snow and ice deficit, we're projecting around 419,000. This is a weird year. It was mild for a long time, and then we started getting walloped. So hopefully this doesn't go too much further. Disposal fee, this is related to trash disposal, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. I mean, this is probably the only sort of operating budget item that is a real concern to us, and Biz and I have talked about it extensively, and we've talked to our health agent, Delshawn Flip, about it extensively, and she's fully aware. The bottom line is, through no fault of the town, no fault of the Board of Health, the costs for accepting trash and for disposing of trash just continues to rise. And it's not just a Rockland issue, it's a Cape Cod issue, a South Shore issue, a Western Mass issue. It's a regional issue because of the cost of disposal. And with the current fee structure in place, it's not covering its costs. So we'll need to appropriate this amount to close things out. But going forward in the next year, with our current fee structure in place, Biz is actually projecting a $200,000 deficit just for trash disposal. So we've explained to the Board of Health that, and I hate to say this, but it's just the reality, they need to raise the fees. That's the only way to do it, because if they don't raise their fees accordingly to cover those expenses, we're going to be, cutting our budgets to the tune of $200,000, which is going to cause a lot of pain and going to reduce services to the public. So the Board of Health is aware of this, and they're going to be having meetings in the near future to make the appropriate fee increases. Again, when you spread it out, across the whole town, it's, 200,000 sounds terrible. It's, you're going to spread it out amongst the whole town. It's not as painful on a per household visit. But still, of course, no one likes a fee increase. No one likes having to pay anything more. But I just can't stress enough that it's not due to any problems or any sort of mistakes made or whatever. It's due to the industry and the market and the cost. So there's only so many places you can send your trash. Last item here on this top section is additional costs related to health insurance. This was not a surprise with premiums or anything. This had to do with when additional people get hired and they're benefit eligible above and beyond what may have been projected. Healthcare costs rise accordingly. So we think we have an appropriate amount budgeted in our operating budget for FY22, but this is what we need to close out FY21. Going forward, we want to put some money back into OPEB. We took some out last year to balance the budget. We want to put some back. Same with stabilization. We took some out. We want to put some back. This is a goal we're going to strive to do every year, is to put money into OPEB and stabilization. Not just because it helps us fund our future obligations and save for a rainy day, but it also helps our bond rating, which saves us money when we go to borrow. The next item is the Capital Stabilization Fund, which I alluded to earlier. So a good example of this is a fire truck that Chief Duffy put a capital request in for. It was, I believe, around $600,000, which, we can't afford $600,000 to purchase the truck outright right now. I had mentioned one option at some prior meetings about a capital outlay expenditure exclusion, where voters would vote both at town meeting and the ballot to raise their taxes for 1 year only. So taxes go up 1 year, you buy the truck outright, no borrowing, no interest. The next year, taxes go right back down. For something $600,000, like a back of the envelope math, it would be maybe $90 on an average house one time. So that's one option to fund it. Of course, nobody wants to raise their taxes even for just a year. So another option we're looking at, which is what we're recommending here, is to try to fund a capital stabilization account. And we're proposing to fund it with 3 sources of funding. $15,000 right here out of free cash. We would reappropriate or reallocate $85,000 that was funded from last year's town meeting for a fire truck, which for a variety of reasons, the fire department is not going to purchase this year, given the physical constraints in our current headquarters building. Is just not going to work. So reallocate that 85,000. That brings it up to 100. Plus take $100,000 from cash we've already received from the marijuana dispensary that's open, from the host community agreement that the Board of Selectmen negotiated. Take 100,000 and put it in there as well. So that would bring it up to 200,000 right out of the gate. That gets us a third of the way there. So this is an idea we have, and we can certainly talk more about it. This would not incur interest like in the past. We've looked at leasing vehicles, and for something the size of a $600,000 truck, we were looking at a 10-year 10-year lease, it involves interest, and it just eats up a good chunk of our free cash every single year for 10 years, which we don't think is the best way to go because we're just encumbering, our limited funds each year. The next item is what's Biz labels as the accountant's holdback. That's just essentially a reserve, a cushion to help us, which is how we generate free cash and how we, set money aside for emergencies. Next are these are the capital items, which when I went over the list of articles for town meeting, that's what these are. The first is the recycling road repairs. If you remember, Dave Taylor did an excellent job. We highlighted from the beginning it was going to be a two-step or two-phase process. He did phase 1 last year. This would be phase 2, which would finish the drainage, add finishing, grading, and add a 3-inch binder asphalt coat on top. So this would really top it off, finish it off, and it will be, I think, a big benefit to the community. The next item is the second and last year of the fire command vehicle, which was a lease purchase we did last year. We took off the truck, the fire truck, which I just mentioned a moment ago, to look at capital stabilization fund. Highway dump truck. There was a request for $45,000 of a variety of miscellaneous repairs to the buildings at the highway department. I'm proposing to remove this item, but I would fund that through the town capital projects down below, which I'm requesting at $75,000. So the 75 would cover that plus some other things. Highway department again, Gardner and Pine Haven, that would repave and do microsurface on those 2 roads. We've gotten a lot of complaints about them from taxpayers and residents. The next one is another thing that we've had to scale back a bit. So Dave Taylor, the highway superintendent, requested $600,000 to do a number of curbing and sidewalk improvements up and down Spring Street, Summer, and Beach Street. And in particular, Dave really wants to try to phase it with some work that's happening with National Grid where, if they have to do infrastructure improvements to the gas lines underneath and they're going to be digging stuff up, that's the perfect time to make these other improvements. But again, we don't have the 600,000 available. So we've talked to Dave about doing this as a 3-phase approach, try to do 200,000 a year for 3 years. Again, not borrowing and incurring any interest. The 2 police cruisers that we try to do each year, I'd like to fund those through the marijuana host community agreement funds. That totals nearly $100,000. Town capital projects, again, examples are the building maintenance up at the highway department. You can see the examples listed above there. There's a number of things that need to be done at the library, as well as additional maintenance at town hall and other town buildings. Police department roof. This is something I really hope we can accomplish this year. It's at the end of its useful life, and I don't want it to get to the point where there's damage inside the building as a result. Talking to the chief and the deputy, this would just be the pitched roof, the asphalt shingles. There's a flat portion in the back. It's a rubber membrane roof, which they'd like to hold off on a little bit longer and wait for all the mechanicals on top to need to be replaced. So it would all get done at once rather than doing that incrementally, which might cause problems if you do the flat roof now and then replace the mechanicals later. And then the next one and we put on here, just in case I need to have some additional discussions with the assistant town clerk, Liza Landy. This would fund new election voting machines. I had talked to the prior town clerk about this in the past, and I didn't think it needed to be funded now, but there might be new information or the machines could be getting to the point where they do need to be replaced now. So I want to do a little bit more due diligence on this, but if not now, it'll be within the next year or 2 after that. So it might make sense to get it done when we can. The school department, that's the $100,000 in technology. That's, I believe, kind of a standard thing each year. And then lease payments for, I believe, their SPED vehicles, if I'm not mistaken, for the schools. You see, again, down below, this is just the cruisers that would be funded separately through the host community agreement. And then both water and sewer on the water side, I won't go through each of them, but you can see what's listed from water, call it water free cash. And then on the sewer side, you can see what's proposed here. We really can't fund because this would leave them in a deficit. So we'll most likely take off this $100,000 kind of to put into their own, stabilization fund. Will most likely take that out. Even with that out, that might still leave their balance a little bit too low. So Biz and I will talk to the interim sewer superintendent and see what's financially prudent and, what they might be able to put off. But big picture, that's where we're at, given our financial situation. This is actually pretty good. So I'm happy to try to answer any questions, and Biz is here in case she wants to jump in and add anything on top of what I just said.
Okay, any questions from the board? Okay. Nothing, okay. So moving on, FY22 Rockland Public School budget. In Dr. Cron's place will be Jane Hackett tonight, I believe. Guys, thank you for, and calling for Lizzie. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for hanging in there for as long as you guys have. I didn't realize it'd be at the 2-hour mark when you guys finally got to present. So for that, I do apologize, but we're ready for you. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could share my screen.
Yep, absolutely.
As you said, Dr. Cron's unable to be here tonight. Ms. Lizzie is here to represent him, and we have the chair of the school committee, Jill Maloney, and member Emily Davidson is here as well tonight. So, am I sharing?
You got it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I just have 3 quick slides. And I'm working on them. Okay, the governor's budget. Why such a large drop in Chapter 70 for Rockland? Chapter 70 is partially based upon enrollment. The Rockland Public Schools enrollment declined by 3.2% last year to this year. This is not unique to Rockland and is consistent with the statewide enrollment decline, and it is COVID driven. The Rockland Public School home school enrollment went from 24 students to 46 students this year. That is in addition to those who are participating in our remote academy, those who have those people have entirely withdrawn from the school system and are being taught at home by their caregivers. We also believe that kindergartners held back, that parents held kindergartners back this year and did not enroll kiddos who were eligible for kindergarten due to COVID, and that they'll be enrolling these or have already enrolled these students for next year. Last year, we also graduated a large senior class, 155. And finally, both the town's wealth and our property valuation may also have been contributory factors to the Chapter 70 decline. How much we're still working on. I am going to be attending a riveting seminar on the Chapter 70 formula on February 22nd. So I will be happy to share what I learned there. But our state delegation, Desi, has told me directly that this is enrollment driven. Some in our state delegation, in their responses to both your very supportive letters and Dr. Cron's letter, has indicated that wealth and valuation may also be a contributor to the Chapter 70 situation. The operational budget implications that this brings in, this slide's a little busy, and for that I apologize. To explain my columns, I have the town meeting budget. This is what's approved by town meeting for 2021. This is 22 proposed, and the 21 proposed is what we were all living with in great anticipation last year, right around this time when Chapter 70 was fully funded through the SOA. The first year of SOA was funded in the Governor's House 1 proposed budget last year. Chapter 70 is the amount of Chapter 70 that we receive from the Commonwealth, and other town funds is the difference between the town budget minus Chapter 70. So as you can see here, I can't see the bottom of my screen, but the town meeting approved budget is approximately $96,000 less proposed for FY '22 than was approved for FY '21. So it's an actual budget reduction for the school department of $96,000 as things currently stand. Our Chapter 70 allocation has only increased by $67,530. We are anticipating anywhere from $850,000 to $1.6 million for this year, and it came in at $67,000. The delta between the Chapter 70 and the town meeting budget would be the other town fund category, which comes in at $11,319,000, which is approximately $163,500 decrease from FY '21 to proposed FY '22. So sort of, again, busy slide, but what this slide here is my budget forecast as we currently stand. The school committee is up to date on this. FY '21 shall be pretty familiar. Whoops, I jumped a slide. FY '21, the town meeting, just to explain this slide. In FY '21, again, we have 4 sources of revenue. We have the town, we have grants, CB stands for circuit breaker, and revolving accounts. Our total revenue for last year was $28,983,000. Our total for the current year, our current expenses, $29,819,374, which has left us with a very consistent operational deficit for the current year of $836,000. For FY '22, if we take the current proposed town contribution to the budget, again, at the $26,115,000 currently proposed, there would be a $96,000 reduction. If we're able to hold our grants stable, which is questionable, but I'm hopeful. Ironically, all of our Title I projections and formulas are holding steady, which means we still are an economically in need community under Title I standards, just not under state standards. Circuit breaker, I'm projecting to hold at 750 and revolving at 900. These two are in yellow because I'm concerned about them being available. Our expenses projected at this time for FY '22, salary one. Salary one is standard salaries, teachers, paras, everyone within the system, standard operating salaries. Salary two are our coaches and stipends and extracurricular activities. That's projected at $667,000. Our expenses, I did increase. There is a 3% increase here in expenses, as I'll show on the summary slide. Last year, we cut all of our expenses except for transportation and utilities by 50%. All of our expenses we cut by 50%, except for utilities and transportation. Expenses, sped, that also is a 3%. Right now, we're running right on target for the $3.5 million this year. We're hopeful that number is going to hold and we're not going to exceed it. It only takes one move in for us to exceed that figure, which historically, as Dr. Cron loves to say, occurs every April. The state has already approved increases in tuition costs for out-of-district placements for FY '22 that we are obligated to pay. So that would be a budget increase of approximately $1.3 million from FY '21 to FY '22, which with the current funding available of the $28,887,000 would leave us with projected, whoops, I did it again, a projected FY '22 deficit of over $2.2 million. With that, the way that we're strategizing at this point, addressing this $2.2 million is to use which I misspelt, the ESSER, which is the Elementary and Secondary Emergency Relief Funds from the federal government, which follows the Title I formulas. ESA 1 is the one that came through first, and that came out at 200 and approximately 35 or 85,000, I'm not sure which. We were required to give a portion of that to the private school community. And ESSR 2 has come out at 1 million, actually $23,000 for us to receive. If I apply both of those to the deficit, our remaining deficit would be $1,065,000. That would be, again, using all of the ESSER money from the federal government to apply towards this deficit and not use it as it's intended, which is to remediate educational loss with students rather explicitly in ESSR 2. So again, so we're at 1,065,000. I am hoping to be able to carry forward $500,000 in FY21 revolving accounts that I budgeted to utilize in FY21. If I'm able to not use those in FY21, I can carry them over and use them in FY22, which would bring our budget deficit projected at this time to $565,915. And if you look up here in the upper right, these are our utilizations of our revolving accounts. School choice, I'm right now projecting keeping it stable from 21 to 22. Cafe, the same. WRPS, the same. Miscellaneous, you'll see the increase from 100 to 600. That's the 500 down here that I've carried up here. It's important to note that 3 of our revolving accounts in particular have taken massive hits last year and this year. Those being SPED revolving. Our enrollment in our preschool is significantly down. Therefore, we do not have the tuition revenue. Therefore, we're needing to utilize our operating budget to supplement the costs of running our preschool program. 2, the daycare program also, we're required to adhere to social distancing and are only allowed so many children within each classroom. So therefore, our revenue in the daycare account has taken a substantial hit. Plus, when we're closed, we continue to pay our staff. When we went remote for in December, plus we had 3 payrolls, so we actually ran into a negative balance in the daycare account that we are now fortunately back in the positive and looking forward to maintaining that for the remainder of the year. 3rd is building rental. We're not renting our buildings. There is no travel basketball. And we have lost a tremendous amount of revenue through our building rental, all at the same time of all of our service requirements are actually increasing. So for a summary, so what are we going to do? We're not going to panic. We're not panicking. We're working, we're working the problem. A year ago, we were in an exceptionally, well, not yet a year ago. A year ago, we were still feeling really good. About, 50 weeks ago, we were looking at closing out the year with we had a 1.4 current deficit, and we made it. So we're gonna do everything we can. So we're starting by identifying peers who are in our same Chapter 70 situation, those who have lost significant funding due to COVID-related enrollment decline, and we're hoping to be a voice at the state level. That process has already begun with both Mr. Lapp and the selectmen and Dr. Cron forwarding letters to our state delegation, and we've had multiple conversations in follow-up with them, as well as other folks that we know at the state level. We're working with the town every day, and I cannot speak highly enough of the working relationship that we've developed with Biz and with Doug and with Jen. And, you know, the folks who work in our office, we all know everyone is doing the best they can every day under, you know, extenuating, very difficult circumstances. And I think we've really come a long way. And I think we're all really proud of that relationship. We're scrubbing our own budget. I promise you that. We found $45,000 at a time. I think Jen and Biz heard me say that probably 700 times last year. And I'm saying it again to myself all the time. So we're scrubbing our own budget. We're looking at breakage. Breakage is the difference between a teacher who is retiring at a high rate of pay, and we hope to bring someone in at a lower rate of pay. We call that difference breakage. The difficulty, what often offsets breakage, is contractual buyouts due specifically to sick time that has been banked that we're obligated to pay out. Last year, again, I just want to highlight that we reduced our non-utility and our non-transportation expenses by 50%. And we held off on a new math curriculum at both the elementary and the middle school levels. We were all ready to go back, but pulled back due to COVID. We had planned to go forward with that this year, excuse me, for FY22. We're also looking at a literacy program for next year, and that folks have been working very hard on. That is not covered in this current projection. We are spending every possible dollar of state and federal money. We have exhausted the allocation given to us for the Plymouth County and continue to have extreme expenses that are specifically COVID related. In particular, our testing program is running at about $19,000 a month. So we project that out over the next 5 months, that would be $100,000. And we're looking at approximately $900,000 in COVID remote teaching salaries for the remainder of the current fiscal year. So rather than using the SSER, which I spelled correctly in this slide, and the state COVID relief money to close economic gaps and to remediate, we're using this money to fund our budget gaps this year and next year, basically using it as revenue replacement. So again, I just want to thank everyone at Town Hall for all that they, you know, have done over the course of this past 11 months. Yeah, every day we think it can't get more unbelievable, and it does. And another curveball comes. I firmly believe this is our cellar, and that there are going to be, you know, stairs and ladders built that we're going to explore. I think, you know, we need to take a very hard look at all of the different type of relief funds that are available and be very judicious in what costs we collectively charge to which relief funds to make sure we maximize what's available to everyone. We're very aware that we're part of a team, and we're looking forward to addressing this as a team. And I think, as you all know, our staff is completely available and open. Our books are wide open. And, you know, we're not looking forward to addressing this challenge. This is a challenge that we have to meet, that we have to face, and that we will meet. So that's where we are on February 16th. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have, and look forward to working together to address it.
Thank you, Jane. Sobering numbers there. I'll open it up to members of my board. Anybody questions or comments for Jane or any of the members of the school committee? Mr. Mullen?
Yeah, no, I have a few things. First of all, Jane, I just want to thank you and Colleen and Dr. Cron. Like Mike just mentioned, really sobering numbers, but like I think just in your presentation, you took a lot of the worry and a lot of the anxiety out of it by your very, yeah, like I think any anxiety we might have had, you kind of assuaded us. Just actually feel more comfortable if that's possible. So thank you. Like what I mean, so over the last 3 or 4 weeks, I think we've all been really paying attention to the cherry sheets, what it would mean for Rockland. I know I've had conversations with actually members of the school committee. I've had conversations with the chair of our board and with Doug. Like, and one of the things, I mean, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, I mean, I was anticipating, like that we'd be at the $1.3 million level as well in terms of an increase. And like, I understand now why we aren't, but that's problematic from the state level. And I think, I mean, and I've known because of the history that, like, I think all of us have and where we have came from in the last 5 years, like, and even more that we, I think collectively, have worked to decrease our reliance on the one-time revenues. And I think from what, like actually we're looking at in FY22, like we're wholeheartedly looking to like actually drastically increase our reliance on the one-time revenues in FY22, which like, I mean, it's great that we have a plan right now to like, I think get through what we need to get through, but like on the other side, I think the state really needs to step up. And I mean, thankfully we're not alone. Like, and I know that Doug already sent an email, Alan already sent a letter as well. Like, and one of the things that I've talked about with Chair O'Laughlin is what about, I mean, grassroots advocacy, as we know, works. Like, and in addition, really to, like actually the superintendent and the town administrator writing a letter, I think if we were as Rockland, to send a joint letter, like signed by every member of the Board of Selectmen, the school committee, one letter, like outlining the fact that this is a real issue and that we're united in addressing it. Like, and asking Rep. DeCoste and Senator Keenan for their helping addressing it. Like anyone who has paid attention to Rockland for like 3, 5, 10 years know that we don't do this regularly. And I think that would be a profound thing just on its face. Like actually, never mind the merit. Like, and that's what I would recommend, that we come together as a school committee, as a board of selectmen, and we write a letter. We each actually sign it. There'll be 10 signatories of the letter, really reconveying what Doug and Alan have already conveyed. So that would be my thought. But thank you, Jane. I mean, like, for all your work. Thank you, Colleen, and to Dr. Cron and Jill and Emily and everybody. It's it's a labor of love. And I mean, like the only way we're gonna get where we're going is a team effort. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else? Any comments, questions? Rich?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Gotcha.
So, Jane, Colleen, Jill, Emily, thank you. It certainly is sobering looking at, not only the school budget, but the town as well. But I do have a couple of things. Obviously, it's early in the process. I think everyone was disappointed seeing the governor's budget come with the Chapter 70. The reaction was right away. I got to imagine that there's the same thing with a lot of communities, and it's interesting. They changed the formula to address the shortfall that communities like Rockland has seen over the years. And COVID impacts us the first year. and then they seem to change the game in year number 2. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But Mike, I think that was a great idea. I do think doing something as a joint venture between the school committee and the Board of Selectmen, I think just adds one more layer to the disappointment that the initial budget coming through from the governor. Jane, as you went through it, and thank you very much for the detail, I noticed something, and I do have a question. So I did notice that the salaries alone, salary ones, represent a little more than a 4% increase, FY22 over FY21. Can you kind of go into that on where that is? Is that additional staff coming in for different programs that you want to do? Is that contractual obligations? I just want to be a little clear on that.
Contractual obligations, it's rolling current personnel from this year to next year.
Can I just say sometime, Rich, when we have the teachers rolling over, it's not just the percentage increase, it's also steps, it's their lanes that they change for education purposes. So it's more than 2% based on that.
Jane, does that include your remote learning COVID teachers that were hired specifically for COVID?
Some, yes, not all.
So they weren't budgeted in the previous year, correct?
Correct. We're not sure at this point what product we're going to be required to produce in September.
Okay, so it does include some potential remote that you didn't have before, so.
It does.
Okay. No, that was my only question, was there some additional staff that, you know, because of COVID, because of the unknown, I know you mentioned, you know, a couple of things with the literacy and the math curriculums changing. I didn't know if that was some additional personnel. I was just trying to get a better understanding.
Right. What that number does not include, it does not include any of the personnel that we were going to hire last year under the SOA to address our English language learners in particular.
Which I know is a challenge.
Right. So it's pretty much almost an equal amount there. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions, comments? Okay, so I mean, I agree with Mike and Rich. I'm all for us drafting a letter, and I agree with Rich's statement. It is early on, and I think some noise has been made as far as the formula, and I think the governor's office recognizes that there may have been some issues with the formula that they use, but I don't think it would be prudent on our part to sit back and wait for them to, you know, make their decision without making any noise about it. So I think we should definitely get out in front of this as a town. We will stand behind you guys, stand in support of you, and we'll make some noise, and we'll make them know that we're not happy about this, and that it's not us that they're hurting. They're hurting the students of Rockland, and that's not something that we're gonna stand for and sit back quietly and take. So I don't know as far as drafting the letter goes, but I for one will 100% sign it, and whatever we have to do from there, we'll make sure that we send it all the way to the top. We write to Governor Baker's office and Lieutenant Governor Polito.
May I
Jill?
speak, Chairman?
Yep, absolutely. Yep, I saw you moving.
I was letting you all do your thing before I, from the school committee side, jumped in. Mr. Mullen, I agree with you. I do believe that this may be one of the first times that we as selectmen and school committee members would work together on this, but I do think it is important for all of us to come together as a united force. This is definitely going to impact the students of Rockland, and we are all near and dear to that. So I do believe if we stick together like we have been, we can make an impact. I know that Rep. Dave DeCoste and Senator Keenan have already been sort of stepping in for us as much as they can, but they are both available to us as well for that letter if we need it as well. I'm not sure how we go about getting it drafted. I can lean on that on my side. And then we can have you all review it to make sure it says what you're comfortable with signing. I will run that by the rest of the committee that is not here with us. Make sure that they're comfortable with that, but I'm sure they will be. They all feel the same as us. I also wanted to thank Jane, Colleen, and Dr. Cron. I believe that they have been working their due diligent time, making sure that no stone has been unturned to find every last dime. They have been. We furloughed people as quick as we could. They just really have been focused on making sure that we stay afloat as best we can right from the get-go. We are now in this pandemic 11 months. And it has been a long haul for all of us, but financially, this is something that they have all been trying to forecast all the way through. So I appreciate their efforts and their time that they have definitely been putting through. And that's all I had.
Thank you, Jill.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that that the board invite the school committee, because we don't have a full school committee with us. So I imagine that this has to probably get on the agenda for the next school committee meeting. That we invite them to join with us to write and sign a letter that will be written by the school department, because that's where it should come from, and I don't want to burden Doug. That was kind of a joke, but
I'll second that motion.
yes, exactly. But but we do that in the next week or so once the school committee has the opportunity to vote.
Bill, when's your next meeting?
Next Monday. We had one tonight at 5 and we have another one again Monday.
Perfect.
So I'll make sure it's on the agenda for Monday.
Okay. So Mike, did you say you were making a motion on that?
Yeah, like that. We invite the school committee to draft and write a letter with us.
All right, so we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I gotta second that.
We got a second. Okay, all those in favor? Vice Chairman Nyman,
Yes.
Selectman Ryan,
Yes.
Selectman Mullen,
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
and Selectman Penny.
Yes.
Never ends with him, right? All right, and myself. So that's unanimous. Guys, whatever you guys need. Obviously, the relationship between the school department and the town hall has improved drastically over the years. Jane, hearing what you were saying, but your working relationship with our staff up here felt great. It's awesome to hear, because it hasn't always been that way in the past before a lot of the people changed out. So let's keep that moving forward, and we'll support you guys in anything that you guys need going forward from here. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you.
much.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, moving on. Doug, other old business not reasonably anticipated.
I have none.
Okay. Town administrators report and correspondence. Doug.
I'm going to keep it really quick tonight. Just a busy, been a long meeting and it's a busy week. Selectmen tonight, Finance Committee tomorrow night, and Capital Planning the night after that. And basically, I've just been doing three things, with our staff, working on COVID testing, COVID vaccines, and the budget. That's pretty much everything all day, every day. So that's my report.
Great, and you already covered that, so that's perfect. All right. Thank you, Doug. Number 7, selectmen's comments. Comments and opinions expressed by individual members do not necessarily reflect the views of the Board of Selectmen and are the opinions and comments of only the individual member. Mr. Penny.
For the second meeting in a row, I do not have any.
Okay. Mr. Ryan.
I'm going to go right along with Rich on this one. Everything's been working pretty well. Everything's under control as best as it can be, and on we go. And we'll defeat these budget problems, and we'll work it out.
Thank you, Larry. Vice Chairman Nyman.
I do not have any comments tonight. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to comment before my colleague, Mr. Mullen, does. I just want to congratulate Mike on being hired as the town administrator to the town of Dayton. it was a very proud moment. You know, I got a text from Kara asking me if I was watching, and I said I didn't know I could get it. She says it's live on TV right now on YouTube, and she's like, Mike, I'm crying. They just hired Mike Mullen as the town administrator, which I think I said it to you online. You know, it's really proud of you for getting this position, and also really proud of all of us for not living in Dayton. But with that being said, Mike, it's long overdue. You've worked extremely hard at this. This has been your career. You've made it your life's passion to be involved in public service. Lean on Doug. I mean, we're not going to add that as one of Doug's goals.
Yeah.
To mentor you, but I think you guys have established a good enough relationship that I think we'd all be fine if Doug answered the phone and helped you out. But I couldn't be more proud of you as a friend and as a colleague. Excellent job.
Hey, I do have a comment. If Mike's leaning on Doug, can we actually build back Dayton?
I think so. That's what I was getting at. Plus, I think Dayton has water, so we can.
No, oh no.
Well, you don't have water?
No, it's a really big issue there as well.
So that's just a pond?
Huh?
So that's just a pond, not a reservoir?
Yeah. No, it's the Taunton River.
Oh, okay. All right. You can't take any of that?
Actually, Brockton does, but I need to look at why Dayton does it. But no, in all seriousness, I'm honored. I watched, actually, it was 2 weeks ago, I think tonight, that the vote was. And I just watched in disbelief that.
So did I.
Yeah, we all did that. Anyone would hire me. But honestly, I mean, I think what actually we have done as a board, and really, and I tell Doug this all the time, and now I'm going to make him blush, but really what Doug has brought to Rockland, brought to the town, and brought to me and has served as me as an example of a really effective and nuts and bolts and very humble town administrator. I want to be that for Dayton, and I'm proud as hell. I'll always be part of Rockland. I'm not going anywhere, but I'm just extremely proud to be able to do it and to be able to serve in the ways that I have. So thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. And with that.
Okay, I want to say something about Mike, guys. Some of you guys were like kids to me, You, Mike, said, I was your coach in school, and Mike, same thing. We were you guys were little squirts when I was raising my kids, and it's nice to see that the new generation, if you will, and Kara, and I know Rich is older than you guys are, comparatively speaking, but it gives me a feeling of success also when I see kids. You guys were a little, my kids' age and stuff like that, and my sons have all done well, and you guys have all done well, and a lot of the boys and girls that my kids grew up with are represented well around through their jobs and what they do. So, for me, it's sort of a proud parent moment, if you want to say something like that, because again, how long have we known each other?
I remember your first campaign for selectman, Larry, way back in the day.
Right.
Yeah,
some 20-something years ago, and that's a lot of years under the water, and it's great to see you guys grow up and replace old guys like me, because you guys are the future of the town of Rockland, and dinosaurs like me. It's it's just time to move on and bring. I always want to bring new people to the town of Rockland, and now Dayton's going to have, one of our best guys go there and take over that town, and good for them. Dayton made a great choice, and I'm sure you'll do us proud. And all I can say is best wishes, and when this COVID thing is over, we're all going to show up one night at your meeting, and sit in the audience and we probably won't say much, but we'll let you know we're there anyway. But congratulations, Mike.
Thank you, Larry.
I seriously, I feel like a proud parent. I got 4 sons of my own that have turned into fine men, and I know your family well, and all your brothers are fine men, and the whole families are doing great. So keep up the good work, and we'll miss you here, but Dayton's not going to miss you, Mike. Dayton's going to say, wow, something really good came out of Rockland, and we got it. So congratulations.
Thank you, Larry. That means everything to me. Thank you.
No, you deserve every bit of it. You know, something hard work pays off, and you know, homework pays off, dedication pays off, and you're living proof of that. And you're a fine example to the other young men and students of the town of Rockland to emulate and to try to follow. You're doing great.
Yeah, like, and on that, like, 2 things. Number one, I obviously think my good looks have helped in that on the whole trajectory. But one of the things, and I wasn't actually going to mention this, I thought about it, but one of the things I did in my interview in Dayton, like, actually that I never done before, like, even on this board or really publicly, I'll make a joke about it, but I never really talk about it. However, like, in my interview, I brought up the fact that I have a speech impediment. And I was very open about it. I said that I had to actually work harder than a lot of other people at what I do. Like, especially like in a role like this, where my effectiveness or not actually having any effectiveness at all, like, really depends on how I speak. And that it's something for anyone who knows me, I can make a lot of jokes about, but I take like it. Like, I'm very self-aware about it as well. But I mean, and I've had to work my butt off in terms of everything we've done. But to, you know, like, to have the honor of actually holding the roles and being elected and having the support that I've had, like, in overcoming the issues I've had to come is a real, like, it's something that I'm proud of. It's, I think, something that my parents are proud of as well, but also understanding and like, in knowing that those same values and those skills that being valued by a board outside of Rockland is even much more of an honor as well. Like, and it's just something, I mean, like, for any young person in Rockland, like, anyone who's 25, 15, or 10, if they have a challenge and they're watching, hopefully they're in bed right now, but if they're watching, I mean, I'm just a product of Rockland, and I worked my butt off just like we all do, and and I like to think I'm making it a little bit the same way we can all make it. So that's all, but thank you.
Well, Mike, if anybody's judging you on your speech impediment, then they're missing out, because you're a lot more than that, and the character that you've had in this town is unparalleled. So
thanks, Mike.
So for that, thank you.
Thanks.
And again, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, enough about that. God, let's move on with life.
Exactly. I know this is like the longest retirement tour ever, and we're not even at your last meeting yet. You know. Motion to adjourn into executive session for the purpose, number 1, to discuss the physical condition of an individual employee. Not to reconvene.
Not to reconvene. I made a.
That's a motion from Larry. I have a motion. I have a second from Mike. All those in favor, Vice Chairman Nyman.
Yes.
Selectman Ryan.
Yes.
Selectman Mullen.
Yes.
And Selectman Penny.